first trip to this part of the world, and it's been a little bit of an eye-opener, but it's great to be here and great to see what everyone does. My name's Andrew Crawford, and I'm the Managing Director of Sounds Air, and I'm a major shareholder of the company. I've been involved with this business since 2003, when I was a much younger man and had a lot less grey hair. Sounds Air is a single-engine IFR operator operating in New Zealand, operating 5 Cessna Caravans and 5 Pilatus PC-12s. This is our livery. When we bought into this business, that we had one Cessna Caravan with blue and white stripes, and as it came out of the factory, and one thing we had to do was get rid of that look. We wanted a corporate look and something that the brand that the customers could identify with. So we went for the orange paint scheme, and it's lasted well, and it's at our main hub in Wellington. It's very recognisable. So this is our 30th year of operation, and we had a vision to provide low-cost transport on a single fare model, which was good for a while, but as our software guys are talking about, you need to grow up a little bit and maybe look at a more of a revenue management style, and we'll talk a wee bit about that later on. For those of you who don't know where New Zealand is, it's a long way from here. I mean, you can see the world map there, and we're at the bottom of the world, and sometimes that's quite a good thing when you see things that are going on in the world. We're pretty remote from it all. We're a country of 4 million people, 1 million of which live in Auckland, the main city at the top, and we fly between the capital, Wellington, at the bottom of the North Island here. Is that slide not? So we're based in Wellington, and we fly across Cook Strait, there's nothing better for aviation than a piece of water so people can't drive. And that was our main business, flying to Picton in the Marlborough Sounds, which was a tourist destination, and we own the airport there, so that's another good thing. We pay our own landing fees. And I was interested to hear this talk before about taxes, into Caribbean with half the fare going in taxes. I mean, absolute nightmare. We have landing fees at a lot of other airports, but in Blenheim and Picton we don't. And just recently, Air New Zealand has pulled out of the major carrier has pulled out of a lot of routes, and this was the instigation of the PC-12 to our market. And we also brought in routes where people can now drive, so it brought a challenge to our business. But the PC-12 has been an absolute boon to our business. So there's our fleet based at our local airfield where our maintenance is done. This is a PC-12 in corporate configuration with corporate seats. The rest of them have commuter seats. And the Caravans, some of you guys won't be pleased to hear, but we operate them with 12 seats. We're not confined to the 9-seat legislation of this part of the world in America. We have grandfather rights. That's, I think, the same as the UK, is that right? Still on 9 seats. So, yeah, I think in Australia they fly 12 as well. So the Caravan with 12 seats is a pretty impressive aircraft. The PC-12 is built with 9 seats. So as I said, we have 5 Caravans, 5 PC-12s, all operating single-engine, single-pilot IFR. So as a wee bit of a background, we've got a video here that we did with Pilatus recently to just give you a bit of an idea of our business. Peter Jackson once said that New Zealand's not a small country, it's a large village. We're only the population of Sydney, except we're spread out to the size of the British Isles. In New Zealand, we're very passionate about our rugby, and it goes right to the provinces, right to the small towns, and everyone gets in. It's that small village environment. We're all working together, and that works up from grassroots right up to the All Black level. Sounds has been operating for 30 years, supporting the regional locations in New Zealand. People treat Sounds Air like it's their own airline. You know, we have a very family-oriented feel about it. Sounds Air had been an operator across Cook Strait, so that niche area, and then Air New Zealand departed several key routes that we thought there was a great possibility, there was a gap we could see in the market. Well, I remember it clearly. Air New Zealand sent out an email. I was sitting at our hangar at Omarket. I got that email, and then Air New Zealand said they were pulling out of these, it was about 6 or 7 routes. We were sitting in the smoker room, and I thought, well, this is something here for us. Right then and there, I thought there was a big gap. And when you see a gap, you've got to take it. No doubt about it. It was a big risk, and it still is. You know, it's not easy. You know, people think you just put a plane to it and make it work. It's not that simple. Sounds Air's core beliefs for 30 years of operation across Cook Strait needed to be transferred to the wider market, and that was something we didn't want to lose sight of. We didn't want to become a big national carrier. We wanted to be still that small niche airline value, but providing a service to these remote communities that really needed it.
Sounds Air has just been absolutely awesome for the Buller District. It is about the service and their staff and the plane, but the quality of their staff and how they interact with our community and customers is just first class. We've got people living in Westport in the Buller District doing work for Disney, doing work for Sony. It's not only just ultra-fast broadband that enables that, it's being able to get on a plane and actually be in Los Angeles or London. It is enabling business to be here.
Reliability is key with an airline like ours. People need to know they're going to turn up and they're going to go. In New Zealand we have a lot of weather, and a lot of it is not good, and the PC-12 flies very fast, very high. We get above that weather and give our clients a great ride. Once they get on that aircraft, it tells its own story, and people love it. We now cover over half the country, Taupo to Christchurch. It's taken us from a niche operator to a real airline. We've just purchased another aircraft to take the pressure off the fleet because we have been at maximum production. We want to be ahead of the ball. You know, where it's going to go in the next 5 years, it's really an unknown. If you'd asked me where I was going to be 3 years ago, it wouldn't have been here. So there's been dramatic growth, and in the next 5 years, I really can't say, but the possibilities are endless. Yeah, thanks for that. That was a video we did with Pilatus last year, and it's amazing the response video production has for your business. I mean, it was one of the most hit-on pages on our Facebook page last year. It really has a big influence on your business video. I was really amazed. And that sort of gives you an idea of what we do. But back in the early days, the problem, and probably what we're talking about today, was when we bought into this business, the bookings were done with an Excel spreadsheet and a Rolodex. And there's a nice example here, the Rolodex and the whiteboard, and it had to change. I mean, we had, people couldn't book, there was no credit card facility. They would ring up and leave their credit card number on an answer machine. I mean, it was archaic, and this was the century. And the business would only operate when we were answering the phone. So something had to be done, and we got together with a man by the name of Neil Middleton, who was one of our regular passengers. He flew with us, and we had a meeting in a pub, and it was sort of the back of a serviette type idea. We need to build a reservation system. We looked in the market, there was nothing available that suited us, so we decided to build our own with Neil, and what eventuated over the years was a system called Take Flight. And Take Flight has, without a doubt, revolutionised our business. We couldn't do it, anything we do without Take Flight. I mean, it's just been unbelievable. It runs all our reservation system, all our bookings, all our maintenance, and there's nothing better than waking up in the morning and someone's giving you $2,000 overnight in bookings or more. It's a worldwide system. We're open 24 hours a day. And you know, it's just been unbelievable, really. I mean, here's an example, and I don't want to go through it, but this is every aircraft vertically, and the different colours are different routes. You can drag and drop flights. You can close them off for maintenance. You can, say anyone can see it from anywhere in the world. This aircraft is available. So if ops staff have it sitting there, I can look in there and go, right, well, that aircraft's available for charter, and so on. I touched on it just briefly. When you had no website and no reservation system, you weren't taking money, so you're only there 9 to 5 or whenever the phones were being manned. And this system, in New Zealand I use the correlation of Coronation Street, but it'll mean nothing to you people. But a soap opera, we noticed that after the soap opera was finished at 8 o'clock at night, people would then go and make bookings. Well, previously we never used to get any of that, and I think now. I think it's about 32% of our bookings are made outside business hours, and 86% of our bookings are made online. It made a huge difference to our business. With that, we needed a good website, and the website, as everyone would know, is the heart of the business, and that development, has grown over the years, and the portal and widget is all embedded on the website. The website is mobile friendly. The front of the business is very, very important. People want that connectivity and to be able to make bookings simply and easily. The next problem we faced was maintenance. When we bought the business, we didn't do any maintenance. It was all outsourced, and it was a bit of a disaster. You were beholden to other people. We had no control over it, and I think there's every invoice there. The plane went in for service, and you get an invoice back, and it was like opening a hand grenade. You didn't know what you were going to get, and we needed to get control of it. So in 2008, and this is a bad photo now that I look at it, because both those planes have got no engines on them, which can only mean one thing: there was new engines coming. And that must have been $1 million a month. We started our own maintenance business, Sounds Our Own Maintenance, which we own 100% of, and in conjunction with Take Flight, we had a maintenance tracking system developed. We were the guinea pig clients for it, and it was fantastic. Really made a big difference. So I'm a director of both companies, so that can be a very conflicted place to be. When I go into Sound Zero and there's 2 planes there without engines, as a Sound Zero director, it's a fantastic day, but when I go back out to my car, I'm a director of Sound Zero, and it's a bad day because I've got to pay the bills. But it's a great business. We maintain all the Caravan fleet there. The Pilatus fleet is maintained at the Pilatus Service Centre in a different town, but we maintain the logbooks and everything for that through Take Flight and the maintenance tracking. And I don't know what else I was going to say about that. I think that that sort of covers the maintenance, but it made a huge, huge difference to our business. Maintenance control. This is a move on from the maintenance module. It took a lot of time as the fleet grew bigger and bigger to manage maintenance. Managing inventory, aircraft breakdown, you were dealing with Excel spreadsheets, and you couldn't drag and drop flights. You couldn't, as the fleet got bigger and bigger, it was almost impossible. It was a full-time job. So now, I mean, I don't do it anymore. I have an ops manager do it. But in the early days, we had 5 airplanes, and you were trying to manage maintenance, and you had a breakdown. It could really take hours and hours of your day trying to do this. Now I know our ops manager can maintain our whole fleet for the next month, probably in the space of an hour and a half, with fleet planning and using Take Flight. And this is borne out more when you have a breakdown and you can drag and drop flights and just bring in another aircraft. I mean, another thing we've done at Sounds Air, and it's a bit of a luxury, but when you're living at the end of the world, it makes a big difference, is that we always try and have an aircraft on the ground. So if there's 5 Caravans, we only have 4 operating at once. And that's not always true, but we try and have that philosophy. It's the same with the PC-12s. Because one of the biggest problems you have, and the previous speaker was talking about on-time reliability, is if you have a breakdown, and when you're at the end of the world, AOG could mean 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days away. And we just couldn't afford that. We used to have that problem. We couldn't afford that. So as we grew, we really got a spare aircraft. And it's a luxury, but it makes a huge difference. And when an aircraft goes out for an extended period of time, it's seamless. I mean, that's not a great picture from the back of the room, but that just lists all the aircraft and the maintenance scheme and every component, and you can search by any number of factors. And you know, from an ops point of view, searching ahead the next 100 hours and the next 200 landings, you can tell exactly what's coming up at a glance. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so I mean, that competes what I said there. The database of managing the complete history of the aircraft. Everything is online, you know, and not that we've ever sold any aircraft or we haven't tried to buy more, but if you wanted to sell aircraft as well, the complete maintenance history is there. The next problem we had was with more capacity was getting charter quotes out. Charter quotes were cumbersome, and we went to take flight and discussed with how we were going to do that. So a system was developed where instead of typing out various quotes at each time, you could plot into the system, you know, a start and a destination, how many passengers, time, and at the push of a button, you got a charter quote that detailed everything, and it could be a client loaded in, where they were going, the price is manipulative, you know, you can manipulate to what you want, terms and conditions, you can send it. A charter quote really could be done in 2 or 3 minutes. And that was really fast and efficient for quoting module, and passengers really like that, the clients really like it, and in the modern era, people want it now. Everyone will notice you get hundreds of emails, and they expect an answer immediately, and this really made a big difference for our ops staff to get information out there. Cargo, and this is not such a big thing that we do, but I know a lot of the other take flight operators around the world have trouble with inventory, where they might have a flight leaving with 5 passengers but have got a cargo backlog, so take flight can manage that inventory for them. They've got instead of flying planes around with empty space, the weight and balance will be worked out automatically, and you say, right, there's 5 passengers, there's capacity for 700 kilos, and away they go, really at the push of a button. That's the cargo management model there. So it's a drag and drop solution that automatically updates space as available is, and then you close the flight off, do the weight and balance, and the aircraft's on its way. One of the problems we had last year was that that main airport at Wellington, which is a larger airport by New Zealand standards, a lot of movements a day. They said if we don't have a common use terminal, then you won't be operating here anymore, which I thought was reasonably harsh, as we've been operating there 30 years. But like most airport companies, it's their way or the highway. So we've developed, along with Take Flight, the common use platform on the AirInc system. And I think there's probably 3 or 4 systems worldwide, but AirInc's what Wellington is using, where we now have a system where the passengers check in, boarding passes are produced, and it gets them through a AirInc. I think there's a picture of the gates here, yeah. So these gates have just gone into practice, we scan the pass, and then the next step for us will be to have all this on an app, so the passengers can have it on their phone to access all these gates. It's actually working surprisingly well. It was a long process, as dealing with any airport is. It's like, they're a bit like dealing with governments. It takes a long time, but it's been good, and I think as we expand to other airports, Christchurch Airport is another large one that we're doing, and they're bringing on a common use platform as well, so we've done the groundwork there. So additional solutions, we had many other important time efficiencies over the time we built Take Flight. So, one of the common things we're talking about, and it's been mentioned here quite a lot, is GDS, global distribution. Integrated crew scheduling was another problem. So all our flight and duty is done with Take Flight now. SMS texts are sent out to all pilots of their duty. They can respond via text to let the ops manager know that they're coming in for work, and they've got the information. We SMS passengers with changes of schedule. At the push of a button. Previously, if you had a bad weather day and had to contact 600 passengers, it was really via phone call, which, as you can imagine, was not good. Flight following is another big one that we do, and there's integrated flight log go into the manifest now, so all flight logs are automated. This is something we've just brought in the last year, and that's working really well. Weight and balance was something I mentioned earlier. Packages, which is maybe something would certainly be of interest in this region, where we sell a hotel and an airline ticket as one in a single package. So it works for the hotels, we're bringing the passengers to them, and it works for us by getting more people on the aircraft. Document management, revenue management is another big one, and managing our fares, and this is all something that's managed by Take Flight now. So the reporting is huge, and really it lets you drill down into the business and see where it's going right and where it's going wrong and what we can do to change it. Safety management, and I know that was something that was talked about yesterday. Safety management in New Zealand is now mandatory, and every airline must be on a safety management system by the 1st of December this year, and it's certainly something we couldn't achieve without the input from Take Flight. So this slide here shows the 5 sort of distinct modules of Take Flight: the passenger service system, departure to control, ops manager, which operates all the aircraft and oversees all the aircraft and passengers, maintenance control, and the one on the in-charter cargo and hotel packages as add-ons. So, I mean, Take Flight has been going since in 2003 in various guises. We've now have 70 clients around the world in 30 countries. So it's a huge growth. And GDS, we've just signed agreements with Amadeus and Travelport. So, I mean, that's been the next big quantum leap for us and Take Flight. And we're really excited to see where that's going to take us. I mean, it's been a long time coming. As a smaller airlines, getting the likes of Amadeus to talk to us even is a challenge. But we're there now. We've got contracts that amazingly don't look too scary, and we've signed them, and we're going forward. So where to next is global distribution, revenue management, and that advanced distribution. So we've got the niche of the business covered on the daily operating aspect and locally, and now we just want to take it globally with the GDS and manage the business more with the revenue management. So our critical growth strategies for a small airline. I mean, when I bought into it, we had 1 aircraft and 14,000 passengers in 2003. This year we'll fly 125,000 passengers with 10 aircraft and probably do over $1 million worth of charter work as well, which is becoming very, very popular with the PC-12s. So the big thing we had to change was the customer experience. There's a resistance to flying single engine, single pilot IFR, or there was, and it really was a matter of educating passengers on how safe it was, and we're single engine over water, maybe not the distances you guys have here, but still, it was an issue, and an issue for the regulatory authority as well. So I mentioned earlier, to change the customer experience, we put everyone in a uniform and painted all the planes one colour. That was a revelation. You'd think it would be basic, but it wasn't. I did surveys on where passengers heard about us, and 54% heard about us word of mouth. So that said to me, we needed to change the customer experience and how they felt about Sounds Air, and customers love us. I mean, and I don't want to blow our own trumpet, but it's a big thing in our business. We fly on time or ahead of time. Customers love what we do, and they feel it's their own airline. That they're really part of us, and we've got to be very careful to protect that. Staff training, and I know Rob was talking about it yesterday, staff training is huge. You know, the staff need to really represent the business as if it was their own. And I empower all our staff to say, you know, they ring me up, what do we do here, what do we do there? Just make the decision yourself as if it was your money. And that really brings focus to them to go, what would I do if it was my money? And the decision's made, because they're not going to make any different decision than what I would make. So it's empowering staff to make good decisions in the interest of the business and the passengers. Software and IT for operations and passengers, as I said earlier, absolutely crucial. I mean, we couldn't do any of what we did without Take Flight. We just wouldn't be there. And I've looked around the world at what other systems are available. Nothing does the complete package that we get from Take Flight. So it's been a revelation. And as I said, 70 users now in over 30 countries around the world. Safety culture, single engine IFR, and that probably goes back to the discussion the guys had earlier. Single engine over water. And one of the sectors we took over from Air New Zealand, they were flying 19-seat Beech 1900s, and there was a real resistance from passengers to get on a single engine, single pilot plane. It wasn't so much single engine, it was the single pilot they didn't like. But we went through, and a lot of these were government departments, and we got a whole lot of facts together, and we had a 20-minute presentation, and we went to these people and gave them the facts rather than hearsay, and how much safer it is. And it's amazing that when you present the facts between single engine, single pilot and two pilot operations, there's really no difference. And the good thing about it, when you have an issue with a single pilot, they're not debating with the other pilot what to do, they're just doing it. And that's a big factor. And the same with a single engine turbine. I mean, they're safer, if not safer than a twin engine piston. And just as safe as a twin engine turbine. So, I mean, we're certainly getting over that resistance. But, you know, we've got a problem now where we've got 125,000 passengers. Within 2 or 3 years, it's going to be well over 200,000. How are we going to do that with 9 and 12-seat aircraft? So we're going to have to go to bigger aircraft. And there's a worldwide problem, I believe, that there's no larger modern twins being made. You know, the next one up really is the Q300 at 50 seats, and I don't even think they're being made anymore. And, you know, and I'll talk to Kelly later. I mean, it sort of worries me that Cessna is building a 9-seat single. What we need is a 15 to 18-seat single, or a modern twin, you know, glass cockpits. This going back to 20 or 30 years to steam-driven instruments, to me, is just a step backwards. All our aircraft are modern, state-of-the-art, glass cockpit, and to go back to, you know, stuff that was built in the 80s, I think, is a backward step. But the problem is, you know, when you can build a 9-seat aeroplane for $5 million, what's it going to cost to build a 20-seat twin? And the manufacturers are saying there isn't the market there for it. So I've already got onto that one, modern state-of-the-art aircraft. I mean, it was a big thing for us. People had, if you were going to get them onto a single-engine, single-pilot operation, the plane had to look good, it had to be good, and had to feel good. You know, they wanted to see glass cockpits, they wanted to see modern state-of-the-art, and that's certainly something we've embraced. So that's all I've got. If you've held on to that, it didn't take too long. If you have some questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. Hello.
Andrew, Catherine Creedy. I've been covering the regional airline industry since the 1980s, and I too see a real problem that there is no larger aircraft, modern aircraft out there. We're using a lot of Saabs, we're using a lot of Brazilias, and as good as they are, they need to be state-of-the-art now. When you go to the manufacturers, they say there's not a market. Are there statistics you have that says there are these many operations in the world and we need a larger aircraft? It's critical because I've talked to one airline president who said he'd chuck his entire code-sharing operation to start again and to deliver intra-regionals and intra-state service, which has been abandoned in the United States, and if he had the aircraft. That's the only thing that's stopping him. So I think there's a tremendous potential out there, and the manufacturers don't see it. Do you have any statistics that would make that case?
No, I don't, but I can imagine, and you only have to go in certain parts of the world, and you come here and you can see very clearly that there would be a market for good modern aircraft in that 15, 18, 20, 25 seat range. We were talking to a leasing company in Miami this week. I mean, the best thing they can offer is a 19-seat Beech 1900, and to me, there's going to be no other choice. I mean, I can see that's the way we're going to have to go, or the Saab 34, but then, I hear a lot of things, not bad things. I mean, they're good planes, they do their job, but expensive to run and old. We want modern state-of-the-art. Any other questions?
Now, you developed the system. How interoperable is it, the IT system? Is it to the global distribution systems and things like that? The biggest problem I see with airlines is the lack of IT talent. We've been talking about merchandising and retail for at least 10 years, and we still don't have it because of the lack of IT, and yet you seem to have developed something there. First of all, how interoperable is it, and does it allow for merchandising and ancillary revenues, or do you reject that model?
No, we don't reject it at all, but so the concept from Take Flight from day one was we wanted an all-inclusive system, a system that ran our whole business, and the catch cry that used to have was it's an airline in a box. So for a start-up, you could go and buy 5 aircraft, get Take Flight, and you're operating, from day one. So then, as I mentioned earlier, moving along, GDS was clearly going to have to be a requirement because, we've just got a government contract in New Zealand, and one of the first things they said is, where's your position on GDS? And this has been coming with Take Flight for quite a few years. And as I said, we're now signed to contracts with Amadeus and Travelport. So we'll be on GDS at the first step by the 1st of August this year. And that's really been, and you mentioned years, I mean, I think it's probably been a 5 or 6 year journey to get there. And the big problem is getting Amadeus and the likes to talk to small airlines like us. But the beauty now with Take Flight is with 70 operators around the world, we can go to them collectively and say, well, hold on, Sounds Air is just this little outfit, and you're only going to bring 100 and something thousand passengers, but with 70 clients around the world, you have a much more bigger power to talk to these people.
So you say you have 70 clients for Take Flight?
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Chris Keldo, another writer. Why did Air New Zealand pull out of this market?
Because they were going out of the 19-seat Beech 1900s. They couldn't make them work anymore. They were an older fleet, so their next size up is the Q300, which I understand that they're also going to get rid of those shortly, and the smallest aircraft they're going to have is the ATR 72, I think, maybe 70 seats. And these routes just couldn't sustain the 50, or at least the 50-seat aircraft. So we've had a wee bit of a complex time because one of the routes was Blenheim to Christchurch, which was the top of the South Island to one of the main cities in the South Island. But we had a big earthquake in New Zealand in November, and it closed the road between Blenheim and Christchurch, and we took over in August. So really, no cloud doesn't have a silver lining. We went from about a 60% load factor on a new route to 98% in one night. And it's been like that ever since because the road is still closed, and it's going to be closed for over a year. There was over 200 major slips on that road, which is the main highway in New Zealand. So it just shows you.
Last November, right?
That was November was the earthquake, and I think in the next, I mean, I can't speak for New Zealand, but there'll be a whole lot more routes they're going to pull out of because they just can't sustain them with the 50-seat aircraft. And which then gives us the problem of where we're going to fit into it with a 9 and 12-seat aircraft and how we're going to expand into that market. We gets back to your point about larger aircraft.
Does that give you the decision then to forget the 18, 20, 25, go to the 50? Because you can get a modern 50-seater, the ATR 40.
You can, but you've got to get the money to buy them and finance them.
Presumably profitable, financeable airline.
Yeah, we have, but it's tough for a small business. We're privately owned. Really, to go to that, we need an equity partner who's going to take a stake in the business and bring a lot of money to. I mean, things can go wrong very quickly with big aircraft like that.
And the PC-12 missions, where is that?
That's in Fielding, which is about. For us, it's only about half an hour drive, and it's on a fly, but it's only it's on a couple of our routes, so it's not too difficult. But it's about 2 hours drive north of Wellington.
Sorry, I didn't even see you over there in the corner, Seth.
I'm very subtle.
Just last question, please. So that maintenance, would you consider that outsourced to Pilatus then? Or, I mean, because you said...
Yes, it's going to a separate company.
Okay, but your problems with your Cessna 208 maintenance, so you haven't, it's the same kind of, your maintenance is outsourced to Pilatus.
It is, but when we bought the PC-12s into New Zealand, they had an agreement that the maintenance would be, we had pricing capped.
Right.
Obviously not for parts that had worn out, but every 100-hour check was at a fixed price. And in fact, that's a very good point. And one of the things I've gone to Pilatus with, and Pilatus have been very open to discussions about that, and they're building the PC-24 jet, and they're offering maintenance at a fixed price. So if you want to go and buy a jet, you're going to pay, if you're going to do 1,000 hours a year, you're going to pay X number of dollars per hour. You're guaranteed that maintenance price. And I said, well, why don't we do that for the older PC-12s? You've got 3,000 of them flying around the world. You must know what they're worth to maintain. It would be very easy to access databases and get that figure. And instead of saying, well, one check was $7,000, the next check $16,000, why don't we have a fixed price where we know for a fact we're going to be paying $12,000 per check, just on a per hourly basis? Because it gets back to that original problem that your maintenance costs are so variable every month. And for a small business, the cash flow is king. It kills it. Yeah.
Do you want to cover by the hour?
We're not, but we're talking to Pilatus now about doing that. Yeah, it's not power by the hour; it's maintenance by the hour, really. Yeah.
Hey, a little bit more on the Take Flight platform. Make sure I understand it. You guys worked with this customer of yours, who ended up now being, I guess, part of a vendor, and developed it in-house yourself, and now resell it to other airlines. Or was it a wholly separate operation?
The development of Take Flight?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it started with Neil, and it was the back of a napkin, and then those guys set up a separate company, and then about 5 years into it, we were the launch customer and sort of worked together with how it was going to work. And then they went to Australia, sold it to quite a few operators in Australia, and then, full disclosure, we liked it so much we bought a 25% of the business. We thought it was absolutely fantastic and had a huge future, and then, but I have nothing to do with the company and running it. It's now a totally separate entity, and and two of the Take Flight guys are here today. And how many employees are there, Dave? About 16 now. 20 employees based around the world. I mean, these guys are both from Seattle, and getting clients in North America was a bit of a benchmark for us. It's a little bit of a tough sell from New Zealand. People go, where is New Zealand? How does that work? Having these wonderful guys here in Seattle makes a big difference.
Great. So still an equity holder, but not operationally involved?
Correct.
Great. Thanks.
Hi, Cape Air in the U.S. is very excited about the TechNam Commuter 2012 aircraft. It is the only new aircraft under development for this type of a market. Have you been acquainted with that? And if so, what was your response?
How many seats is it?
9.
Yeah. Yeah, the PC-12 kills it at one engine as opposed to two. And has it got turbine engines on it? Or pistons? Yeah, we don't fly any pistons. Yeah, we made a decision. We used to fly, when we bought into the business, we had an air van, which some of you may not know is a 7-seat aircraft made in Australia, and it was fine, but it was limited to 30 knots. Well, Wellington Airport's often 50 knots. It's one of the toughest airports in the world to fly into. And we made a decision in the very early days that no more pistons over water. We didn't like it. We didn't want to be part of it, and it gave the passengers a lot more confidence getting on a turbine-powered aircraft.
If I understand correctly, you are operating in a country where single pilot, single engine IFR operation is allowed.
Yes.
irrespectively of the overwater time?
Not irrespectively, no.
Okay.
Similar
because
rules.
your overwater time is within gliding distance.
Correct.
Okay. Just as an operator in this climate, in this environment, where would you put the more safety? Would the second engine or the second pilot bring more safety?
Neither. I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think two engines makes any difference at all, and the facts bear that out. And I think it's similar with the second pilot. Some passengers like the second pilot to look at, but they're actually not doing much. But it is a good. I mean, from our point of view, we would go with two pilots before two engines because of the training potential. You know, easy to train staff up with two pilots. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that the PC-12 was basically a transformation for the airline, and because you can get above the weather. Does that mean there is resistance to the Caravan among your passengers? And because I know, having looked online at your network, that it's on the shorter routes. And are you thinking of phasing out the Caravan in favour of more PC-12s, or?
Definitely not. No, it's horses for courses. So on the shorter routes, on the 20-minute routes, and one of the operators before was talking about how many millions of landings they've done, and we do a lot of landings too. We've got one Caravan that's done over 65,000 landings. But it's horses for courses. On the shorter routes, the Caravan's absolutely perfect. The PC-12 it would be hopeless. The further routes, longer routes, and mountainous routes, the PC-12's essential. You couldn't take the Caravans over the longer routes because you're down to 9 and 8 passengers due to fuel requirements, and but it just wouldn't be feasible. 10,000 feet in ice, I'm just not interested. We want to be at 25,000 feet. And it's interesting, the PC-12s, the Wellington, Christchurch to Blenheim sector, it's mountainous and windy. So the Q300s and the ATRs are limited to about 17 to 18,000 feet on those routes because of the weight. So they're down in the wind and the ice, and the PC-12 is often in clear air at 25 to 30,000 feet and going a lot faster.
That's very interesting. With the PC-12's capability, do you see yourself? I think you go up to Hawke's Bay, don't you?
We do.
That's quite a stretch. Is that your longest route?
That's the longest route, just under an hour.
Yeah. You see.
But the problem, once again, is 9 seats. And when you've only got 9 seats full is good. When you've got 6, it's bad. It's a very fine margin as compared to 19 seats or 30 seats where you've got a bigger margin to make money. And the Caravan, we're a bit spoilt because we have 12 seats, and of course the lower operating costs on a 20-minute flight. The Caravan on that route can be a license to make money, but when they're not full, it's not as brutal.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
One other thing we're talking about single engine before, we never overhaul engines in the Caravans. We were on a thing called the More Engine Extension Program, which takes it to 8,000 hours. But we don't get to 8,000 because we cycle out. There's a 16,000 cycle limit on the PT6 on one of the... Yeah. So we're doing about 2.1 cycles, so the engines get to 7,300 hours, and then we give them back to Pratt & Whitney, and we buy a brand new engine on the Pratt & Whitney FEP engine exchange program. When I first went into this business, we did one engine overhaul. It was a complete disaster, and we saw never to do it again, and it saved us about 50 grand, but cost us quite a lot in stress. And the thing I don't like is that our whole business is based on single engine over water, and I want to know we've got good, reliable engines. You've got to be able to sleep at night, and with those brand new engines, it makes you sleep, no doubt about it. We've never had an engine failure, in touch wood, and why would we? It's well maintained. All these guys talked about it earlier, the HUMS units, the ADAS, engine monitoring, everything is done to within an inch of its life. And just buying new engines is part of that theory.
Hi, Andrew. I'm Jamie Kagutek from Embark Aviation. I'm wondering if, turning back to take flight, if you can address the how you've been able to develop a system in that's so multifaceted that adheres to the standards in the various different areas, whether it's the IATA standards for commercial or maintenance record keeping standards, how the product is able to address those needs to all the different kind of areas that it touches.
Yeah, that's a good question. The two areas that we were mainly concerned about was a centre of gravity, weight and balance. I mean, if there's ever going to be an upset, that's the first place they're going to go to. So we had to make sure that was bulletproof, and the only the New Zealand Aviation Authority is called the Civil Aviation Authority, so we went to the CAA and showed them what we were doing and got that signed off as an acceptable means of recording weight and balance. And the other one would be pilot flight and duty was another important area, and that takes a lot of work, and it's tough for the take flight guys because every country's got a different set of rules. So to write a system that is manipulative to every single country was tough. But once again, we went to the CAA and we ran dual systems for maybe 3 or 4 months until we could, made sure there was no bugs involved, got it approved by the CAA at an audit, and it was no problem. I mean, as Rob said earlier, we don't mind the regulatory guys. I mean, they're doing their job, we're doing ours, and really it needs to be, and it's taken a long time to get there, but it needs to be a collaborative approach. I mean, we're all trying to get to the same place, and we find the CAA in New Zealand is very receptive to new ideas. I mean, and one of the things, and we're talking about single engine over water, is that just recently we've got rid of all our flight bags. We've got everything on iPad in the cockpit on all the planes, so that freed up space between the seats. So where the flight bag used to be that was never opened, we're just flying all these papers around for no reason. So we've now purchased life rafts for all our caravans that sit in between there, because it was something we always wanted, was a life raft, but with it being in the pod, a complete waste of time, because on a ditching it would probably be ripped off, or you were never going to get in the pod to get it. And I believe that there's a very good chance that the Caravan will survive a ditching, and the problem we're going to have is that the passenger's going to die of hypothermia. The water's very cold, and nothing would be more tragic than having a perfect ditching and have everyone drown or die of cold. Maybe not such an issue in this part of the world, but what the initiative we came up with was to get these life rafts that now do fit in the aircraft, and we're just in the process of giving the pilots training on how to use them and how to deploy them and how to get the passengers into them. It wouldn't be a fun ride, but it gives them a fair chance, I think.